Can feel my body cold against the concrete, but I can't seem to get enough. My mind is fixed on what it wants. I just let you beat me, look at me deceiving. Let you get the best of me, in bed with my worst enemy. This is a no-go, I just can't take hold. This is a danger zone, back up and get me home. This is a no-go, I just can't take hold. This is a danger zone, back up and get me home. So put your hand in mine, follow me, let me waste your time. Set up feet, do some stupid shit. Take a seat, let me waste your time. So put your
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Lawyers Down on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Palavita. I'll be one of your lawyers on today's show. And today we've got a very special subject we're going to be discussing, and that's Vladimir Putin. For those who've been following the news in the United States and, of course, reviewed around the world, that Vladimir Putin has been indicted by the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and has arrest warrants on him. Yet, he was able to fly to the United States of America, meet with Donald Trump, fly back, no problem. So what's going on here? How can he have arrest warrants issued for him, but he's free to fly around the world and meet with world leaders? So with that, joining us will be Peter Bennett, who is an attorney, a graduate from the University of Miami School of Law, and he may have something to opine on what happened here, Peter. I mean, Donald Trump says, come over here, and he flies to the United States. He's basically has warrants. He's not convicted, but he has warrants against him for criminal acts by the International Criminal Court. And it's like they just bounce off him. He's Teflon Putin. So what are your thoughts on this one? This is the big one.
Well, first of all, I was going to start with the background, but I'll start with the background in terms of history. So this is not the first time that happened in terms of the actual situations. As a matter of fact, just today, Switzerland said that they were willing to grant immunity to Putin if he attends a peace conference, despite the arrest warrant from the International Court. So this has happened before, but even many times. Putin was in Mongolia, and they did not arrest him. And then we'll get into the reasons why these are the legal issues in jurisdiction. But the other thing is, it goes back even further because Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir visited Chad, Malawi, South Africa, and Jordan, which are all ICC member states. And there was an arrest warrant against him. I don't know the year because it doesn't say, but anyway, the point of this is that the ICC is basically powerless in terms of which was sort of one of my conclusions, but they may claim jurisdiction, but it's up to the countries that are receiving the visitor to enforce their arrest warrants. So it hasn't happened, but I'll give you a little background and then we'll get further into the legal issues. But this is the actual background. So an arrest warrant was issued for Vladimir Putin by the International Criminal Court on March 17, 2023. And it related to a pretty bad crime, unlawfully deporting children from Ukraine. I forgot the number, but it's a massive amount. It might have been 30,000. I heard it the other day. And basically taking kids. I don't understand what Putin's thinking, clearly. But this warrant did not mean he was immediately arrested because of the limited enforcement capabilities. So that is the first issue, beyond if they actually got a hold of them. There's a bigger issue, or as big an issue we'll get into on the legal side. So, but jurisdiction is number one. They can claim jurisdiction, but the question is, do they have can they even arrest them?
Yeah, then what's the point of having the ICC issue warrants if they can't do anything? Doesn't it make a mockery of the international legal system?
Well, to a point, but I mean, we're talking about different countries. So, they did agree to it, but what do you do if Mongolia or some other country says, sorry, we don't want to offend Russia. We don't want to cause an international incident. We're afraid to do it. We don't want to affect our trade. The ICC is a bureaucratic court, and so they have very limited power. And I'll tell you the other issue. Might as well get into it. We're going. So even if they got jurisdiction, and this is the key point, they claim that they have an absolute right to jurisdiction, but in 2019, the ICC appeal chamber held that in Jordan referral re al-Bashir appeal, that there is no reason why there is no reason why Article 27 should be interpreted in a way, that would give somebody immunity from prosecution, but they still they still could have immunity. In other words, the statute itself doesn't prevent their arrest, but it does not recognize or preserve total immunity, but they can still claim immunity. So it's again very complicated compared to most of our cases. I mean, we've been looking at cases in the United States where there's clear law. Here, you really have nobody to enforce anything. That's the bottom line, on them actually catching them.
So if they don't and they can't enforce anything, what is the purpose of issuing these warrants, international warrants, when they have no way to enforce it, Peter?
Well, that is, I mean, from a real effect, you're right. Absolutely. There's a pure, you can have perfect jurisdiction, but you have no way to arrest them, then you can't do anything. It's sort of like a criminal in the United States. If you don't catch them, you can't do anything. And the only thing that I found really interesting was that this limit, here's what it does do. It limits Putin's ability to travel out unless he makes a special agreement. He might go to a peace conference, but he can't necessarily say, I'm going to take a trip to Florida for vacation. So not that he would necessarily, anyway, I'm sure he's pretty, content in Russia for so many reasons. He has a physical situation, I'm sure that's very nice. And also he doesn't want to risk it. So but here's one thing I dug up that was really interesting in terms of maybe he could go to some countries, because according to polls, and these polls, especially in Russia, I'm skeptical, and maybe all of them are rigged, but according to a recent poll, Putin was favorably rated by 79% of people in Russia, 81% in Serbia, 77% in Moldova, and 53% in India. So, and I know he's not controlling the Indian media. So the question is, is he so popular in Serbia or Russia because of the state-run media, or Moldova, which I don't know much about, or is it rather that he's got some good press out there and people like what he's doing in some countries?
Mm-hmm. So what do you think that we do know? We used to, when we first started, broadcast in Russia. We had about 20,000 followers, and then yeah, we did, and then we went to like 0. I'm serious. In other words, we got cut off, which I've learned doing this, that
I'm sure they wouldn't want
these other countries. These countries can control their internet. All right.
Oh yeah, no doubt
about it. They cut us off like crazy, and so we went to like 0. But I found this very staggering. I saw the same poll you did, that Putin's favorable was 79% in Russia. I mean, it was pretty high. So
if it's true, again, who are the pollsters?
Yeah, that's true.
What I mean? If the government, everything, you have to be skeptical. I mean, if it's a government pollster in Russia, maybe Putin says, I want a 79% number because I don't want to go 100 because nobody would believe it. But 79 is, and 79 is about as high as you'd ever want to go if you were rigging it, because you go at You go to 90, people say, wait a minute, everybody I know, but 79 maybe, see
But
what I'm saying?
we also know that China and India, and we do broadcast into China and India, that they indirectly have supported this war by purchasing oil and maintaining trade with Russia. So, what is it the member states that support this war? What arguments do they have? Why is this a good thing?
Well, I don't think they're, well, each one has their own incentives, and we have to be careful about what we say in China because we're on TikTok. So we'll get cut off there. Anyway, the point is that they also have economic needs. India, right now, let's talk about India because I know more about what's going on. So the U.S. is working to say to India, if you don't take, I believe it's 2 million barrels a day from Russia, we have to supply it. Who's going to come up and, in a world that's relatively tight on supply, depending on the month and the day, is the U.S. going to arrange for Saudi Arabia? Does Saudi Arabia even have the capacity? So, energy runs everything, and India's and China are, big industrializing countries and emerging markets, and they need energy. So, it's easy to say no. The other argument about this, which I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but I heard that they were paying pretty low prices. So I don't know if it's, how much money Russia really get. They have a cost of production, but the initial appearance, or what's told by the Trump administration, which usually tells the truth, and some people may disagree with that, but the story out of them is that Russia's making a profit from India and China. But I also have heard, and I have to research this, that they're paying much lower. They're not paying market rates. So maybe the profits aren't as much as you'd think. But they do need energy. Look, you can have your people starving or without power, if they need power.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and what about China? In other words, what is China's position in this? I noticed that the United States is trying to negotiate a peace, but why isn't China involved? You would think that the world's second largest economy would have a stake in this war in Ukraine. Why weren't they involved?
They have a lot of alliances with Russia, and look, if you're China, I understand why. They have relationships with Russia. They're next to Russia, and they're not big fans. Neither is big fans of the United States and our power. So it's, everybody out for themselves in a way. So, I wouldn't rely on any other country. I wouldn't rely on Europe. I wouldn't even rely on Ukraine. I'm going to discuss this more on Wall Street Hackers, my financial show about Ukraine a little bit, but it's a tough situation, one, obviously, but the other thing is, I don't like how Trump's negotiated it to a point, and he's solved 6 wars. Nobody in the very few in the media will even say this, but there's been wars that have been going on for 30 plus years in Africa, and 6 wars altogether he's already solved. So I think ultimately he's going to get this done. The odds are in his favor because time's in his favor. And Putin's not in a great position, but I'll cover this in my show, Wall Street Hackers, which is coming up next. But I don't like how he's negotiating, not that I'm the one who's necessarily supervising the process, but I think that's been a minor fault of his, and he's done a lot of things. Right?
I think our viewers would be interested in these 6 wars. I'm familiar with the Armenia, Azerbaijan, but what were the other 5 wars?
I don't know, if India and Pakistan, he resolved that.
Right.
Geez, I'm not going to be able to do it off the top of my head. I think Rwanda, maybe in Ethiopia, it was I think Rwanda, I believe, and 2 countries in Africa were battling. I think that was one of the wars was going 31 years. And the mainstream media doesn't mention this at all. But
no, it isn't.
No, of course not, because it would help Trump. But in the end, even Hillary Clinton said that she'd nominate Trump for a Nobel Prize if he got Ukraine. I think she was being sarcastic, but I think ultimately time's on his side, and it has to end at some point, hopefully sooner than later.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have to go, Nick, because it's time to get started on Wall Street Hackers.
Yeah, okay. We'll just sign off in just a minute, and we'll see you next week. To me, it's very interesting because as I keep studying international law, I'm going like, why bother studying international law when
if it doesn't matter?
If it doesn't seem to matter, in order to
it matters a little, but you're right. It's without the stick. It's just words on paper and bureaucrats.
If they can't enforce it. Okay. All right. We'll see you next week on the Lawyer then. Bye-bye.
Yep.
I can feel my body hold against the concrete, but I can't seem to get enough. My mind is fixed on what it wants. I just let you beat me, look at me deceiving, let you get the best of me, in bed with my worst enemy. This is a no-go, I just can't take hold. This is a danger zone, back up and get me home. This is a no